world. When Donald Trump came into office, we had the lowest inflation in the world. We had the strongest job growth in the world. We had the strongest economy, the fastest GDP growth in the world. And we are now collapsing as this lying buffoon sits on television and blusters. Is the second Republican Great Depression knocking at our door? In 3 weeks, on my birthday, May 7th, it'll be exactly 80 years since Germany signed the terms of surrender at Dwight Eisenhower's headquarters in Reims, France. That year, 1945, also signaled the official end of the Republican Great Depression. And so here we are, 80 years later to the month, and it may well signal the beginning of the second Republican Great Depression, the fourth economic crash in our history. Now, you all know we've talked about this before. Neil Howe, who's been on this program, his book, The Fourth Turning, is here, and his previous book, The Fourth Turning and Generations of America, he and Mr. Strauss, William Strauss, as I recall, they have this theory that basically every 80 years you get a depression followed by a major war. 1772, you had the Great Panic of 1772, which led to the Boston Tea Party in 73 and the American Revolution in 1776. You had the 80 years later, you had the Great Panic of 1857, which was followed by the American Civil War. 80 years after that, you had the Great Crash, the Republican Great Depression of the 1930s, followed by World War II. And here we are, in 3 weeks, it'll be exactly 80 years since the end of World War II, since the end of the first Republican Great Depression. But you don't just have to look, or you don't have to even at all look at these 80-year cycles. By the way, the reason that Howe says that these 80-year cycles even happen is because it takes basically 80 years for all the people who remember the stupid mistakes that were made that led to the last crash to die off and no longer be around to warn people that they're making the same stupid mistakes. You know, like Smoot-Hawley, and here we are with the same tariff insanity. By the way, Mr. Smoot and Hawley were both fired in the 1932 election. They both lost their seats. But all three of those first panics, 1772, 1857, 1930s, they were all caused by wealthy speculators interacting with corrupt administrations. In the 1770s, it was the British administration. And here we are. You know, Trump puts tariffs on everything coming from China, and then, Tim Apple calls him up and says, hey, I'll give you another $25 million or whatever. I mean, we have no idea. But if you give him enough campaign money, or enough money for his inauguration, or buy enough of his family's Doge or meme coins, he'll give your industry an exception to his tariffs. I mean, hell, if you give him enough money to buy an election, like Elon Musk did, he'll let you run the government and fire all 30-plus people who are investigating you. This is, without a doubt, the single most corrupt administration in American history. Now, I put all that, I lay all that down as kind of the frame, but I got a very concerning phone call last week. When's the last time you checked on your home title? That's the legal proof you own your house. The problem is, in today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles, and your equity is their target. Criminals forge your signature on one document, and boom, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property, and you won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. That's why you need to stop what you're doing and find out today if you're already a victim. Use the promo code TOM14, THOM14, at HomeTitleLock.com to make sure that your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report plus a 14-day free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HomeTitleLock.com now. Use the promo code TOM14. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code TOM14. From the CEO of the ad agency that sells advertising on this program. Many of you are listening on nonprofit stations or on free speech TV where you don't experience any advertising. But we're also on for-profit stations all across the country, and we're on Sirius XM. And we run ads. It's how we pay for the show. It's how, the salary of everybody here is paid, basically, including myself. And the CEO of our ad agency called up and said, we're down tens of thousands of dollars for the year, and we're seeing right across the board, it's not your program, Tom, he says, it's everything. Right across the board, advertising revenue is in the tank. Now, that's one of the earliest of the early warning indicators. I've been through a bunch of recessions in my life, and I owned an advertising agency in Atlanta, and I owned an advertising agency, or I co-owned an advertising agency in Michigan, and that was in the 70s. I've been in this business for a long time. I started in radio in the 60s, and I started in advertising in the 70s, and I can tell you, I've been through a couple of serious recessions, and every single time the first thing that collapses is advertising revenue. And here we are. We're seeing it right now in real time. And meanwhile, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo tell the Financial Times for an article titled "Warning Lights Flash for U.S. Consumer Strength as Credit Defaults Rise," that they're seeing, people defaulting on their credit cards approaching record levels. And tourism to America, which represents 3 to 4% of our GDP, has collapsed. The ad agencies are pulling back because they see that consumers are pulling back. So, dollars spent on advertising don't produce as much response. And consumers pulling back is the beginning of a death spiral, because when the consumers pull back, companies that make things or sell things are no longer making and selling things because there's no consumer demand. Consumer demand drives almost 80% of our economy. When that consumer demand collapses, as it is in the process of doing right now, in part because people are freaked out about their 401ks, but when that consumer demand collapses, companies start laying off people. And when they lay off people, guess what? Those people no longer have a job. They're no longer buying things too. So it has already begun. And China is not taking Trump's little trade war lightly either. And now they're crippling the UK steel industry. And here in the United States, the Chinese government is blocking, quote, direct exports of major U.S. commodities, including beef, poultry, and liquefied natural gas. And they're not even using tariffs. They're just saying you can't, to their own people, you can't import this stuff into China any longer. Not to mention the vital rare earth minerals that they're refusing to sell to us now and have been for several weeks. The goal is to cripple us economically. And by the way, it's working. Most concerning, though, is what's happening to the bond markets and the dollar. We have seen the dollar go down and Treasury yields go up. The last time this happened was in the 1930s. It signaled the beginning of the Great Depression. Remember when the bond market went wobbly last week and suddenly Trump dropped all his tariffs on everybody except China? Well, the backstory is apparently the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, got together with Europe and Japan and said, hey, we're sitting on $4 or $5 trillion worth of U.S. debt, treasuries. Let's just sell those suckers. And sure enough, our government had to start raising the amount of interest that we paid on 10-year treasuries in order to get anybody to buy them, because the market was just awash with them. And it's continuing. And then on top of that, we've got a $36 trillion debt, 100% of which you can attribute to 3 presidents, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. Reagan's tax cuts, accumulatively, over the years, Reagan's tax cuts add up to about $20 trillion. Bush's tax cuts are $6 trillion. The 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that Bush lied us into so he could win the 2004 election, that's another $6 trillion. And then Trump's last tax cut cost us an estimated $5 trillion. That's $37 trillion. Our national debt is $36.2. And they did all this because of Jude Wanniski's 2 Santa Claus theory. Run up the debt when there's a Republican in office, squeal about it when a Democrat's in office to force them to shoot their Santa Claus in the face, the Social Security. Trump has bankrupted or thrown into crisis virtually every business he ever started. before he got into crony capitalism and politics. He's that incompetent, and now he's doing it to us. So get ready. I'm telling you, this is not going to last. This economy that we inherited from Joe Biden, the best economy in the world. When Donald Trump came into office, we had the lowest inflation in the world. We had the strongest job growth in the world. We had the strongest economy, the fastest GDP growth in the world. And we are now collapsing as this lying buffoon sits on television and blusters.